With the 25th century fast approaching, and the starship construction facility known as Yard 39 finally safe for disassembly, Starfleet Command would recover several mid-23rd century starship designs from that shipyard, refit them, and breathe new life into these very old vessel classes. And one of these new classes, the Europa Class, would go on to become a tactical monster, defending Federation space from various outside threats. But what do we know about this upgraded design? Well, today we'll find out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon, a Star Trek web series that dives into the history of any given topic using beta canon sources and my own imagination to fill in the gaps. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the Europa Class as first seen in Star Trek Online to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Please note that there isn't a lot of information on this class, and the information that does exist from Star Trek Online, well, some of it directly contradicts information that has already been established in Alpha Canon. Thus, I've had to slightly alter the design's history in order to properly fit it into this new age of Star Trek. And of course, as always, because this is a beta canon video, all information relayed should pretty much be taken with a grain of stardust, and only considered a little bit of Star Trek fun. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. After almost a century and a half of being off limits due to severe baryon radiation eruptions, the star at the TL9139 star system suddenly calmed down and showed no signs of acting up again. This meant that the long-abandoned shipyard known as Yard 39 could finally be accessed, and all Federation technology in that star system removed and dealt with. Yard 39 had been one of Starfleet's largest and longest established construction facilities apart from the yards in the Terran star system themselves. And as a result, hundreds of starships in various states of construction from the mid-23rd century needed to be dealt with. Normally, these starships would merely be sent to a decommission yard for disassembly. But the recent attack on the Utopia Planitia facility, where a fleet of newly constructed transport vessels, along with a large number of recalled starships being modified to act as colony support vessels, were destroyed, leaving Starfleet and the Federation feeling quite vulnerable. To build the fleet back up as quickly as possible, Starfleet had focused its construction efforts on one easily built class, the Inquiry Class, and had created several variants on that design, and were pumping them out like tribbles in heat. But now, Starfleet was presented with a unique opportunity to grab these old Starship hulks, upgrade and refit them with new technologies, and add them to the fleet. And one of these reacquired classes would be that of the Nimitz class, a 4-nacelle design quickly refit, and the Europa class would be born. Sitting at a length of approximately 416.2 meters, the Europa class was designed to be operated by 485 officers and crew members. The standard safe cruising speed for the Europa class was warp factor 7.5, with a maximum emergency speed of warp factor 9.8 for 12-hour increments. An unknown included technology within the Europa class was what was known as the Quantum Slipstream Field Projector, which allowed the Europa class to travel at speeds exceeding 300 light-years per hour. Thanks to its time stranded in the Delta Quadrant, the USS Voyager brought back with it many detailed scan and various attempted and failed technologies based on slipstream and also transwarp drives. However, due to the limitations of the time, as well as the untried nature of this technology, the Europa class could only remain in slipstream for 30 minutes at a time, before having to power down the drive, initiate a recharge cycle of 60 minutes for reactivation, and repair any damaged components, including any possible developing microfractures within the hull. This meant that the technology would only be used in extreme circumstances, as Starfleet attempted to work out all the bugs within it. The Europa class would also test another new propulsion technology Starfleet was developing, that of the transwarp coil. Unfortunately, the coil included within the Europa class would be considered a complete failure. Requiring almost all the Starship class's power to even turn on, the coil itself created tremendous strain on the Starship's hull, rendering it far more dangerous to utilize as a technology. And this particular developed coil would be subsequently uninstalled and its development abandoned. Tactically, the Europa class would again be a testbed for new weapons and defensive technologies, but this time with far more success. The Europa class would test Starfleet Command's new 10 Type X annular confinement beam-jacketed phaser array system, which would have its emitters placed strategically around the outer hull of the starship. 2 weapons banks, each including 2 Type 12 pulse phaser cannons and 4 variable payload launch tubes, were located at the front of the primary hull. 4 additional launching tubes were located in the class's aft section. These launching tubes could easily accommodate both photon and quantum torpedoes, but in addition would also carry a payload of transphasic torpedoes to be used in extreme emergencies. Shielding for the Europa class would be of the multiphasic regenerative type now standard on all Starfleet starships. And the Europa class's hull would be coated with a duranium nanomesh material which covered the class's ablative neutronium alloy hull plating. The Europa class was also equipped with a large arsenal of fighter craft and auxiliary space vehicles, making her a formidable fighting machine. Lastly, another new starship system tested within the Europa class was that of the Emergency Crew Replacement System, also known as the ECRS. With hollow emitters installed in all critical areas of the starship, an officer or the main computer could activate a variety of holographic replacement personnel, should a combat situation or emergency require the use of these programs. That meant that emergency medical care, engineering and damage control officers, or even security personnel could be easily activated, replacing or augmenting the current crew. Even an emergency command hologram was included within the system, to be activated if the captain, first officer, and second officer were incapacitated or killed during a critical situation. The Europa class quickly became a successful patrol vessel for the outer reaches of Federation space. 8 Nimitz-class hulls were recovered and refit from Yard 39, but Starfleet would only construct an additional 8 vessels of the class. Once again, Federation politics would get in the way of this starship class, with the more pacifistic member worlds of the Federation appalled by the sheer warlike nature of the Europa class. After fierce debate between the Council members and Starfleet Command, finally a compromise was made for only 16 of the class to be constructed, as Starfleet was able to convince the Council that pure warships were still a necessity for the organization, reminding them of battles such as the Battle of Wolf 359, the Battle of Sector 001, the Dominion War, and even the attack on Utopia Planitia. The 16 constructed Europa-class vessels would each perform above and beyond Starfleet's expectations, receiving refits and upgrades during the class's run. But amazingly, Starfleet would never revisit or construct any more of the class, even when various other conflicts would seem to dictate for them to do so. Nevertheless, the 16 vessels of the class would all survive to be decommissioned over 100 years after their initial refit to become the Europa class, making them a complete oddity in Starfleet's historical starship design texts, as virtually the organization had never had a single starship design run survive with all its starships intact. Recovered during a time of fear and anxiety for the Federation, the Europa class, though small in numbers, certainly made its presence known throughout the Federation, serving with honor and distinction, earning this class its amazing place in Starfleet history. Thank you for watching today's episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon. What do you think of the Europa Class and the historical narrative that I've created here? Do you want to see more videos like this one? Well, leave your comments in the section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel make its mark on the galaxy and live to tell about it? Then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Live long and prosper.